Phase Zero, Season 4, Episode 34. I'm Jenna Anderson, and I am joined today by Jamie Chirac.
Oh, good morning. Happy Wednesday, everybody.
And Aaron Perrine.
Oh, man. What weird post-credit scene is going to happen 5 seconds after we get off the microphone next to everybody?
Who knows at this point? Who knows? We have a lot of Marvel news to talk about today. We have a pretty big MCU return to talk about that I know we've been very, very excited to break down on this show. We have some Shang-Chi 2 news. We have some Fantastic Four bits, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and a whole section for Deadpool and Wolverine at the end of the show. So if you are still avoiding spoilers, that is when to jump off because we will be talking spoilers. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to everyone who joined us for last week's episode. I know it was very emotional, very different from how we normally run the show, but seeing the outpouring of positivity both during the show and afterwards was really, really meaningful. And I know we all really love to see that. Thank you to everybody who also joined us for our WandaVision rewatch on Monday. That is now available on your podcast apps and on YouTube if you want to go back and watch that. We talked about the first 3 episodes and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, so without further ado, Jamie, talk about the big news of the week.
Oh, the big news of the week is that James Spader, Jimmy Spades, is returning as Ultron in Marvel's new Vision series. It's expected to begin filming in early 2025, which is sooner than we think it is, guys. It's almost...
It's so close. Jamie's internet completely gave out. Oh no.
She got so excited. The internet.
You got blipped. You're back. You're back.
Whoo! We're off to a real strong start today. I said James Spader was back, but I don't know what else you heard.
Early 2025.
Early 2025, and the Hollywood Reporter teased that they're reporting that maybe Scarlet Witch will be in that show, which I think is quite interesting. Here's my thing. She's coming back in my mind. Like, there's absolutely no question about it. But whether or not the Vision show is the first time we see her, I don't know. Big spinoff of her first show is coming soon. We'll see. But when it comes to Jimmy Spades, you guys, he's my favorite Marvel MCU villain. I'm so excited. He's finally back. When he didn't do What If, when Ross Marquand took over for Ultron, I thought for sure we were never getting James Spader back. So I'm feeling good. Whether or not Wanda's in it, I just can't stress about these things right now in life. We have too much going on. What do you both think?
I love that he's coming back. It's crazy. Somebody pointed out, I think this is like his second role since Age of Ultron. Like, it's kind of crazy in the grand scheme of things. Like, he really just has been doing The Blacklist, Jim Viscardi's favorite show, and not much else for the foreseeable future. Everything I know about The Blacklist is from Jim Viscardi talking about it in Slack, including the animated episode that they had to do during COVID, which, like, I will never forget the screenshots of that. That was a very wild choice. But yeah, I'm excited that he's back. It's interesting to see like what context this could possibly be in. Part of me is worried that it's just going to be flashback sequences and he might not like actually be there to advance the story at all. But also at the same time, Ultron is connected to so many robots being built in the Marvel universe. Like, part of me is like, oh, it'd be so cool if we could get Jocasta, or if we could get, the whole Vision family. Like, I feel like there's maybe a way to tee that up. So either way, I'm excited. And I agree with you on Scarlet Witch. I'll believe it when I see it, but I also wouldn't count it out.
So methinks that you don't pay for Jimmy Spades unless Jimmy Spades gonna be in a lot of the show. Like, I hope this isn't Don Cheadle and Falcon Winter Soldier situation where he's here for exactly 6 seconds, gets an Emmy nomination, and pieces out. I laughed because we just live in the Jamie like renaissance now of like you're getting whatever you want. So please make good wishes, Jamie. Please be responsible with the genie lamp that you have at that house somewhere, I'm sure. It's exciting for people who want to see a lot of the old. This is what is gonna occur now. I think that's where we are. Is like the Robert Downey Jr.'s back, and they're paying him the small GDP of an island nation. Freaking Ultron is back. Like, all this until the Thunderbolts trailer that we all actually get to see has freaking Zemo in it, and then like everybody just gonna lose their mind. We're all everything old is new again. So it's extremely exciting. I think Wanda's coming back. I am fond of the internet speculation. Shout out to Alex from Cosmic Circus, who's like, might not be Scarlet Witch she is in this show, which is fascinating and would be interesting. I do wonder. I don't think there's diminishing returns, but my girl sure does love playing an unstable woman. She enjoys it a lot.
Well, so can you break it down for the listeners what that might mean of her coming back, maybe not as Scarlet Witch?
So WandaVision, delightful TV show you all might have heard of, draws a lot on Tom King's The Vision run in Marvel Comics. It does not take all the parts of the Vision run, where Vision moves to, what is it, like Virginia outside of DC, and then builds his own family, where he has, Virginia, Viv, and Vin, the Vision family. They're just like us next door, except for they're weird robot synthezoids, and hopefully they don't ever get any gum. His wife is modeled in that comic on the brainwaves of Scarlet Witch, Virginia, and that causes her some issues, shall we say, across the course of that. Was it like 6 to 8 issues? Is it 8? But yeah,
I think
like
so,
yeah, and it is very, very, very chilling what goes on with Virginia, and like harrowing in certain ways in that I feel like Elizabeth Olsen would just eat that up. She would destroy that. It would be sad. It would be sad though, because everybody'd be like, hooray, she's coming back, and it's not Scarlet Witch.
Here's my thing about if they did this, and because
oh no, she said too much. They cut our feed. Oh, there we go.
The universe does not want me to talk today. It's such a good comic, and I've had multiple people tell me like I want them to do stuff from this comic, and here's why I feel like they're not going to. It's similar in style and tone to what they did in WandaVision. They pulled a lot of themes from that comic. What, like, not obviously not the storyline, but if Elizabeth Olsen came back and did that, it would be like the same thing Paul Bettany did in WandaVision. And I think that would be, they'd have to do that really correctly in order to not make it be like they're just doing this again. Open to it, obviously. That comic again, like that comic is really good, but we'll see.
I just want Viv. Viv is a delightful character, and I know people really, really want her in the MCU. And, Aaron's Young Avengers hopes would definitely continue to be alive if Viv existed in the MCU.
We just want to get to it before I have gray hair. That's all I want. That's all I want. Also, for like a bunch of people I saw being like, well, how can, Ultron come back since he died in Age of Ultron? I'm like, he's a robot. Like, our world is under siege by robots right now. It's very hard to kill them. So he can easily come back. We're fine.
Just a new iPhone update. Like,
right.
Honestly.
Literally, somebody gets Tony Stark's old phone in a storage unit and opens it up, and he's like, haha, guess what? Back.
Who knows?
So,
it is crazy that the show is filming right around the corner at this point. Like Jamie said, 2025 is not that far away, which is nuts to think about. So hopefully we will find out more details, and I'm sure there'll be some sort of casting that'll come out, and it'll be like, this is very suspiciously, hinting at certain story points, and obviously we will talk about that on the show. So kind of shifting gears to a completely different project. So we got a Blade update this week. It's very small, but it is still worth mentioning. According to a new report from Deadline, the director Jan Damage is still attached to the project. So he is not amid all of the changes. Obviously, the movie is not coming out originally when they said it was going to be in the fall of next year. And they've kind of said that they're focusing on getting it right. But what do you guys think?
This is in literally the last line of that story. It is so a toss off, like, yep, there you go, as a part of an update to this. And I was like, wait, what? Because you can get an internet outrage cycle out of anything, like any small thing. Because if this movie comes out and it's directed by this man, there was a almost 3-week discourse cycle about this movie being in massive, hilarious jeopardy. That's like, oh, look, and he's still was there. I don't know what happened. I mean, listen, if you pay attention to newsbreakers the last 2 weeks, it's not like they don't get anything wrong. Special guest Blade actually will happen. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know. we'll talk about this later, but the opportunity exists to have a story where you give the old Blade fans something they really want, and a new generation of Blade fans something to build their whole personalities on. And I hope that they do it,
I have a lot of opinions about that, but like you said, we'll save it for later. As for this Blade news, tease. I just want Blade to happen, and I just, as long as Mahershala is still attached, I'm happy. It'll be sad if that goes away. We already lost Delroy Lindo, and I'm really still kind of sad about that one. But great, the director's still attached. It seems like maybe it's a real movie, but I'll believe it when I see it.
We need to clarify. We lost Delroy Lindo in the projects, not in
wow,
life.
Good
He's
catch.
Still okay. Yeah.
Because
that did sound very dire for a second. He's not attached to Blade the movie, but he is still okay.
It's dire for me, Jamie Jirac, huge fan of Delroy Lindo, not for the world.
There you go.
He's gonna be in Ryan Coogler's vampire movie, so at least he's in a vampire movie in the very near future. But yeah, I just had to clarify, just in case anyone is about to immediately go Google Delroy Lindo and make sure he's still alive. We just need to clarify that. So shifting gears, trying to keep things on track, to another project that has not been announced in any official capacity, but that fans definitely want to see.
Oh boy, so we got Simu Liu. We're carrying the torch out there, BD, wherever you are, with Shang-Chi 2 updates, however sparse we can give him crumbs. Fan Expo Canada, there was a Q&A with him, and someone asked about, the development cycle of it. Of course, he can't really say that much about whatever, except for it's happening, but also about Michelle Yeoh coming back, which is going to be a much more interesting proposition now, post Everything Everywhere All at Once. And he said he wants her back. So when we shared our scenes together and I had the opportunity to fight her, what a sentence. It was more of a dance fight. First of all, I was really nervous. And second of all, she's so petite and graceful. And I just felt like a big, clumsy chunk of meat just flopping around. He joked. It worked for the scene, right? She's trying to kind of teach me to find harmony with my body. And it's very Tai Chi oriented. So it's very flowy. She's kind of guiding you through, and I'm stumbling. I didn't have to do a lot to get into character, and she's great. Just the absolute best kind of person to hang out with. And, he's not in charge of the casting, but that is some light nudging from your star. Hey, can we get the cool, her and Ming-Na, can we get them back in here to do anything? Thank you. Crumbs.
What I have to say about that is, if we're giving newly Oscar minted RDJ a gazillion dollars, we better be giving newly minted Oscar Michelle a good old paycheck. I know she's not getting RDJ money just because her character is an Iron Man, but let's remember that she is an Oscar winner, and Oscar winners get paid more. Also, I feel like Simu is I'm done talking about this. Let's switch gears. I'd love to have Michelle back. I feel like he's just exhausted. This poor man has been answering the same question for now 2 years. But yes, obviously we would all like Michelle, like Aaron's idea of Ming getting up in there. Obviously I want Ming in anything.
First of all, I pulled a Jamie. I had not read this quote when I put this in the rundown, and I love the big clumsy chunk of meat qualifier. That is delightful. I love his take on this whole thing. And yeah, I agree with both of you. I feel like she needs to be in the movie, but if anything, she deserves to be paid in order to justify her being in the movie. But it would be so fun to see her in that context again, because I honestly feel like a lot of people forget that she's already in the MCU. And so why not bring her back? Why not give her a larger role? I feel like that would be something that everyone would be very fond of.
She's in the MCU twice.
Oh, that's right.
Let's not forget, she's also one of the original Guardians at the end of Guardians 2. So she could play a secret third thing. Who knows?
Secret third thing. Surprise. I mean, and there's so many easy ways to do this, to write her into whatever it's going to be. It's been so long that you could just make Shang-Chi 2 anything. They could just be working in a convenience store and no one would notice. I'm pulling for him to have something to say. Can you imagine how elated he's going to be when they trot him out into a stage to actually announce this thing in earnest and be I'm finally free. Finally. Oh, gosh. But yeah, we're rooting for it.
Absolutely. So, and then before we take a break, this is another piece of news that has been very, very much talked about over the past week. I actually wasn't the person to suggest that this should be on the rundown. This was a Jamie suggestion, and I'm so thankful that she did, because I definitely have thoughts about this, but I will let my co-host talk before I share my thoughts. So earlier this week, Marvel announced that they are partnering with the company that puts out the For Dummies books, and they're putting out Marvel Comics for Dummies and Captain America for Dummies. So these are both going to be released in February of 2025. The Marvel Comics one is written by Troy Brownfield, who is the editor of the Saturday Evening Post, and the Captain America one is going to be written by Stuart Moore, who is the founding editor of Vertigo Comics and a former writer of Marvel novels. The Marvel Comics one kind of puts it as readers will be introduced to key storylines that have been woven through Marvel Comics for decades and learn the essential facts and foundational backstories necessary to understand how the comics and characters are so interrelated. So I have thoughts on this. I think that this is both a good thing and a bad thing, but I want to hear what you guys think first before I yap.
I feel like it's kind of boring. Like the way you just described it, I'm like, oh, I'm so out of this. Also, isn't For Dummies like, I can't believe they still make these. I thought this like this is such a 1990s thing. I feel like I haven't heard the name For Dummies since I was like heading off to middle school. But I do think I'm with you, Jenna. I'm kind of mixed on it because I do feel like,
oh no.
She's just saying too much today, man.
She
Like
is.
it's everything. There is Jamie. You back? Okay.
yeah, that was it. Go ahead. I'm sorry,
Okay,
guys.
all right.
You're good.
It's all right. This does reek of Borders. It does reek of big backpacks, maybe that they roll, back in the past where we're from. It is in hilarious contrast to something that Jenna's probably going to bring up here in a second, going on over there at the old Blue brand, which might be a better deployment of this. I also think that just in market trends, they probably looked at like God rest Comic Story and all the other people who do that on the YouTubes, because that's how these kids figure out about these storylines, because it is so hard even in this digital age sometimes to get a hold of some of these issues if you don't have like infinite money. Even with Marvel Unlimited, even with DC Universe, like it can be a little bit tricky. But yeah, this is one way to go about it, I suppose. I don't know what let's say, what did you say? Like under 25 person is going to be like, oh yes, this is For Dummies book. That's how I'm going to
Who is
learn
this
all this
for?
about the.
Exactly. Who is this for?
I like, even Nicole is in the chat and saying like she's definitely going to buy these for her kid. I do think that there is value to something like this to a certain extent. I have a whole bookshelf over in the other corner of the room that is a lot of books that are like this, not necessarily like in the For Dummies level, but they are just like books about comics, and they're kind of a broad overview of certain things, and it's a lot of information that I already know, but it is fun to still have that like bound in a physical thing that isn't just the Marvel or DC wiki page. I also just have to shout out Patrick King in the comics, who says, I feel like whenever I have a For Dummies type of question, I just come into the Phase Zero chat and ask it to Jenna. So thank you for that. I think that this is a cool thing to an extent. I think, to Aaron's point, they definitely like looked at like the market research of it all and just the influx of people wanting to understand the overview of comics. There are so many YouTube channels at this point that literally just recap storylines for you and try to make it so you don't have to read the thing yourself. And so I do think that maybe if someone is under 25 and is that kind of YouTube consumer and sees something like this, they might buy it. I think that it'll be an interesting thing to check out. I'm curious how extensive it's going to be compared to actually reading the comics, and how that is all going to work, because at the end of the day, this cannot replace reading the comics. This cannot replace the literacy of the comics, but I do think it could still have value. And as Aaron said, it's interesting juxtaposing this with like the compact comics that DC is doing at this point, where they're reprinting actual storylines that people would want to read or didn't know that they want to read, and they're making them really accessible. So it is interesting to just kind of see the contrast.
In high school, I would have had my mother buying me 4 and 5 of those DC tiny editions at a time. Yeah. Like, because I was already doing that with manga. I was already doing it with other weird, like Twitches and other weird YA novel series, which we don't have to go through all of them here. We could list all of that stuff. But yeah, like, I don't know why you wouldn't just do that. It's like, here's whatever, like Armor Wars or all the John Byrne She-Hulk stuff, or here's the beginning of Black Panther, all of Ta-Nehisi or Secret Empire or whatever, right? And then you could also tie it into the movies as they're coming out as well. This is really easy. The synergy's never been more prevalent. I don't know how you let James Gunn beat you to the punch on that with such a head start. I don't understand it.
I will also say, like, I do love books that just explain the comic history of stuff. Like, Douglas Wolk has a book called All of the Marvels that was released a couple years ago. I love that book so much. He literally read every single Marvel comic that he could find and wrote about the experience, wrote about like the connective tissue of storylines and all of that sort of stuff. And it's a fascinating thing to read, and you don't need to have comic literacy to be able to understand it, but it is still just like a fun way to recontextualize it. So I'm very curious to see how these books are going to be. Hopefully they'll be something that is a useful tool, but yeah, we just had to talk about it because I feel like a lot of MCU fans will probably be curious about something like this. So we'll just have to see.
And I want to say, don't feel shame if you want to read For Dummies, you know?
Yes.
I like, you know, I think I looked it up. The For Dummies started in 1991, and it was a different time when it came to like For Dummies, and I feel like that type of title doesn't work in this day and age. People are.
Yeah.
Well.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to take a 1 minute break. And when we come back, we have some Spider-Man news, some Fantastic Four news, and a bunch of other stuff. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Phase Zero, Season 4, Episode 34. We have a Fantastic Four quote, but not the kind of quote you might be expecting. Jamie, take it away.
Well, let's see if my internet will let me get through it. Let's find out. Oh boy. Jessica Alba shared some advice for Vanessa Kirby. She said to Collider, I think just have fun. The fans are so amazing. It was probably one of the best times of my life, going around the world and meeting all the people that just love the Fantastic Four and love these comic books and can relate to these stories. That, to me, and to be able to meet so many different people that you can touch and bring joy to them, I would say that's first and foremost for anyone who gets the honor of playing one of these awesome characters. So I'd tell her to just have fun and soak in the moments. That's really nice. Really lovely. Good for you, Jessica Alba. Sharing the love. Appreciate it. What else is there to say? It was a sweet thing to say.
I love Jessica Alba's energy towards these movies, like still to this day. And I love that she is like so gung-ho to possibly come back. I also love the joke of like, oh, she was totally in Deadpool and Wolverine the entire time. You just never saw her. Like, I love that kind of stuff. But I love that she's still enthusiastic because I know so many actors who have been in pre-MCU movies get a little jaded or a little kind of hurt about the way that the franchise has kind of evolved. So I'm glad that she has good perspective. And I think her advice is very good.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't it nice to hear from someone who likes being in these movies? Who's not like, I hated this. Like, it's just like very refreshing. Also, I think I did see some of the quotes about her wanting to come back, and I'm like, that is a layup. There is a certain genre of millennial, late Gen X man that would enjoy nothing more And maybe some ladies audience too. I think that once we get more concrete detail about this movie, they are going to really feel the love, because this is something that so many people have been waiting on this whole time. This and the X-Men have been things that people have been really beating down the door for years and years now. So enjoying it, being Pedro Pascal's emotional support human, all the duties of being the Invisible Woman, apparently, that she's ready and willing to pass down. It's really nice.
So speaking of things that are really nice and that are on the horizon.
Oh, yeah. Listen, Jeffrey Trammell, who's doing Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man for Marvel Animation, is a very nice man. He's very, very sweet. And I'm really just personally very happy that his man's show is going to come out at some point. He's been through a lot the last couple of years between Craig of the Creek and this show. There's a lot that's gone on, but he joined our friends over at the official Marvel podcast that are totally not the competition, that don't air at the same time as Phase Zero, to talk about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man and expectations, because they asked him what he should expect, and then he said, I want to give a cliche, expect the unexpected answer, but honestly, I think you can expect Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. It's him. He's hanging around New York. It's not a huge intergalactic adventure. I wonder who that's for. It's him just like at his roots, and there's a lot of things that I think we as a fan base kind of take at first glance. Like, oh yeah, I know how this works. I know that's a part of the story. That's been really fun to dig into. Well, maybe, or you don't know everything. Or maybe there are certain things that you're kind of like, oh yeah, I know that part. No surprise there. And I'm really excited to dig into those, because it's really fun to be able to subvert those expectations when they've been built up for so long. I also want to say that in these comments before that quote, he talks about, he's like, I'm a fan of all Spider-Man. Like, I love Spectacular. I love Spider-Man the Animated Series. He clearly knows that there's a segment of the fan base that's like, why does this show exist? Why aren't you just making more Spectacular or making more Spider-Man the Animated Series? And it's like, poor Brad Winderbaum cannot greenlight 8 Spider-Man shows at the same time. We'll get there. Maybe we'll get there. And it sounds like maybe you 90s Spider-Man fans might actually somehow Peter Parker returned. Mary Jane returned, and she's not a cloud anymore. How are you guys feeling about Friendly Neighborhood? You guys have seen it.
I mean, we've all seen the footage at D23 when we all were at D23, including Jamie. Jamie was at D23. And it just looks so incredible. Like it looks both like the amalgam of every Spider-Man animated project that we've ever had, and also something that is so new and so distinct and so fresh. And I think, like, to the 90s of it all and the nostalgia of it all, I love that this show can potentially pave the way to be like the current generation's Spider-Man show. Like, I feel like every generation needs that. There is the Spidey and His Amazing Friends, which is utterly delightful. Every time I channel surf and I end up on the like Disney Junior, I'm utterly delighted by that show. But I'm excited to see what this show offers to the fandom and how it just teaches people about certain characters. The fact that like Nico and Amadeus Cho and all of these people are in a Spider-Man show is still insane to think about. And just having seen a little bit of the execution of it, I have a feeling the show is going to be something special.
I said this before, but when we were at D23, when BD hosted that epic panel, my excitement for this show shot through the roof. I'm just so hyped for it. And Jeff seems to be really, he's got the finger on the pulse, knows the Spidey business. So I'm ready. And it is funny, like yeah, Spider-Man cartoons have always existed. They will keep existing. But this is the first time in my lifetime I've ever been like ahead of one and excited about one. It's always just like, oh, this is here. Like the Disney Junior thing you were talking about, I've seen some of that show, and it is like, what is this? It's wild that it exists. And that's where we're at. And I like that.
I do also have to say, Spidey and His Amazing Friends, Patrick Stump of Fall Out Boy fame does the theme song. So it's like, that's all you need to know. Like, I do show is like getting the next generation. And I do feel like Your Friendly Neighborhood will probably be like the next step in getting them even more excited about Spider-Man. So I'm excited.
Nothing more to be excited.
Yeah.
There's somebody excited though. I know Jamie is.
Oh, I could not take the story about my boy Michael Keaton. I got everybody saying Jimmy Spade, so it's time to go Keats. My boy Keats is up here. He did an interview with GQ, and he credited Tim Burton with the MCU and the DCU. He said, Tim deserves enormous credit. He changed everything. I can't necessarily say this, but there's a strong possibility there is no Marvel universe, there is no DC universe without Tim Burton. He was doubted and questioned. And while I think this is very fair, I mean, Tim Burton's Batman movies are some of the best comic book movies ever made. Batman Returns is my favorite Batman movie. I do think we also have to shout out maybe a little bit to Richard Donner, who directed Superman before Tim Burton had his hand in that. I think that Tim Burton deserves his credit, but if we're giving Tim Burton credit, I just want to make sure we are also giving Richard Donner credit. But Michael Keaton, way to support your boy. Michael Keaton is always out there, and he's saying, this is my friend Tim Burton. He's a little weirdo, and I love him, and that's great.
I agree with you about the Richard Donner of it all. Definitely go watch the Christopher Reeve documentary trailer if you've not already watched that. That looks so beautiful. I do see Keaton's point, because I feel like the Batmania of that first Batman movie coming out, like obviously we were not, fans or even around at that point, but it's like you hear about the fervor around that movie and just how it made it into a monocultural moment and made people kind of recognize what comic book movies could be. Because it's like, even then, the Donner movies, the whole thing around them is verisimilitude. It's all just like trying to make it authentic into reality, whereas like Tim Burton made it a little weird. He made it a little gothic and a little campy, and that definitely paved the way for a lot of what we have today. So I totally get why Keaton's saying this, and I do think he makes a good point, even if like the actual credit is probably like Donner, Burton, Sam Raimi. Like, it's so many different things.
Right. I mean, that's wow. The list of like directors and projects you just listed are like, oh boy, not only really great superhero movies, but like great popular, like pop culture moment movies in general, right? I also think that he's absolutely got a point here where like that, like all of this. And I think Variety sat down with Tim last week to talk about like all of this. And he said, I'm not making no other superhero movies. I don't know about that. But I know one thing I know about Tim Burton is if you back up the Briggs truck, my man will consider it. He will think about it. He said he wasn't making another Beetlejuice for years and years and years. And here we are, baby. It comes out like 2 weeks?
Yeah.
If that. Yeah.
I have not liked a Tim Burton movie since 2003, but yet I'm still like, yeah, Beetlejuice, let's go. Like, it doesn't matter. Like truly, I like, it has been 21 years since I've loved a Tim Burton movie. Big Fish is what I'm shouting out to.
Yeah,
but it does not matter. I'm just like, Tim Burton, let's go. So
Frankie Weedy is goated. I also would like to say he points out an interesting thing too, which is all of these movies that that we hold up as these big examples of the comic book genre, like pillars of them. He's like, well, the idea of a franchise universe didn't exist when I was making Batman. Like, I could just do what I wanted. You know what I mean? And that as soon as he started working on 2 and he started getting studio notes, he's like, oh, this has changed. Like, this is really different. So maybe that might be a little bit of what's going on too. Mm-hmm. Not that the studios can't have have certain notes, because I mean, sometimes people do need to be reined in. It's like, why are there vuvuzelas? Like, you need to be checked every once in a while. Tony Stark, you need to be put in check. But there are moments of like, yeah, this was a completely different time, man. Like him being like, she's in freaking patent leather the entire time. There's weird black stuff coming out of his mouth. Was just like, okay, sure, in a kid's movie. Fine. It's set during Christmas. You do what you want, you goofy Tim Burton. You do what you want. So yeah, it's a different time, guys. Like, he needs some credit.
Absolutely. Especially even like, this is a whole separate conversation, but like his Superman movie that never happened, like that is the epitome of weird studio notes and things that, there is so much to that movie. Definitely recommend researching it. Jamie just did like the Kermit flail. She was very excited at the mention of that because of course Nicolas Cage. But yeah, like that, like I think Tim Burton uniquely understands what it was like to try to make a franchise movie at that time, before franchises were even really a thing as we know it today. So I think that is definitely a good point. So speaking of other franchises and of one of the weirdest Marvel bits that I completely forgot even happened. So if anyone remembers, in the lead up to Eternals, Dan Stevens was doing interviews and he very heavily hinted that he was playing Crow in Eternals. That ultimately did not happen. It was Bill Skarsgård who voiced Crow, and everyone was like, what happened? Why was this happening? And so he spoke to the playlist and he explained how that happened. He says, quote, "When what happened was I was in London shooting Eurovision Song Contest when my good friends Brian Tyree Henry and Kumail Nanjiani were in London shooting Eternals, and we went for a curry. And as sometimes happens when you're hanging out with actor friends, everyone's like, let's take a selfie, and someone posted it. And in the way that only the internet can, it was just like, he must be playing Crow. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so we just had fun teasing fans for a while. It did get kind of out of hand where like I would sit in junkets like this with something completely unconnected, and people would say, so what's it like working with Chloe Zhao? And I'd be like, oh, listen, let me stop you right there. This has gotten way out of hand. But yeah, all that happened is we went for a friendly dinner in London. So now knowing the full story, that is even funnier to me.
I love Dan Stevens. What
Me
a
too.
gem of a man. I just remembered this photo. I totally forgot about this photo until this exact moment. And what I also love about this story is that it involves filming the Eurovision Song Contest movie, because that was my comfort food in lockdown. I watched that movie at least 10 times in lockdown because it's like real comfort juice for old Jamie Jirak. But I think that it is funny when actors just like, yeah, let's just have fun with this rumor. And I would like to shout out BD in the comments. Hi BD, he says someone needs to represent the I don't care if Eternals gets a secret crowd. And I'll take that for you. I think it should get a sequel solely because I think that everything deserves like a second chance, but I don't really care either. So I'll take it. I'll take that responsibility.
I do feel like the story points will continue in some capacity. They just might not be in a full-fledged sequel the way that we would have expected like years ago. But yeah, Aaron, what do you think about the Dan Stevens of it all and the sequel of it all?
It's amazing what one well-tuned internet bit can do, where you're in a junket for a movie that's completely unrelated, and someone's asking you, "So like, what was it like?" We're like, whoa, hey, oh, wow, hey, like, what are we doing here? I ate one curry. I ate a single curry, and now the internet thinks I'm in this thing. He did not help, but in my in a comedy 20 years ago, he would have to like get in it, and they'd be like, "Can you ADR yourself into this?" And Skarsgård would be like, "What's wrong? Why did I get kicked out of this role?" It's just very strange in the way only the funniest Hollywood stuff can be, and like the casual, like, "Oh yes, my good friends." These two wonderful actors who everybody really, really enjoys. We're just going to take a quick selfie for real. Brandon has derailed the chat. Like, the chat has derailed itself talking about Eternals.
We'll let it just be in shambles. I don't know. We're going to take another quick 1-minute break. And when we come back, it is the Deadpool and Wolverine section of the show. So if you are still avoiding spoilers for any reason, now is the time to drop off because we will be talking spoilers. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Phase Zero. We are in Phase 3 of today's show, which is our Deadpool and Wolverine spoiler section. We haven't had one of these in a couple weeks, but there was just enough Deadpool and Wolverine news. Now that the movie's out in the world, now that the spoiler embargo is broken, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. And first and foremost, I put this one first because I just personally am excited to talk about it. So friend of the show, Andy Park, posted a piece of concept art that he did that was in the very, very early stages of developing this movie. And it showed that Deadpool could have potentially gone into a Marvel Comics universe. multiverse. So I think we have that to queue up right here, just to have the image. There we go. So
Whoa,
it would have literally,
so
he would have
sick.
hopped across the multiverse, and he would have ended up in a universe where it's the OG 6 Avengers fighting the Battle of New York, but they're all rendered as their comic versions of themselves in animation. And Andy had a really long comment that I'm not going to read, kind of describing all of it, but he did say that the goal was to kind of emulate the most iconic comic artists for each of the characters. And so you can kind of see of like, it's Bob Layton's Iron Man, Jack Kirby's Captain America, Walt Simonson's Thor. Like it's super cool to see how this is rendered. I know if you're a listener just listening to the audio, this is not helpful, but you can go find that on Andy's Instagram. I just think this is really cool. What do you guys think?
I mean, I'm a big fan of all of the weird retro looks. All this stuff is like catnip, but I can only imagine just like you want us to animate what like, you know how long it's gonna take for this, like whatever, how many second bit. I'm still amazed at the Wolverine stuff that happened in the movie with like having these tiny bits, building an entire weird skull X crucifix set, and then the poor person, or like lucky person, they had to oil freaking Hugh Jackman up. It's just a lot. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to do.
Yeah, I think this is really cool. It would have been cool, but you can't fit everything in there. You know, got to get Chris Evans cursing a bunch. So you pick and choose.
Do you know what he was doing to the budget? Well, so speaking of characters that were in the movie, and may have had a different fate than we previously thought.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I try not to be on Twitter as much, but even I haven't been able to avoid the Gambit, the year of Gambit, as the X-Men '97 people and all of us joked with Jamie last weekend, or was it last weekend? Who knows? So we got Ryan Reynolds dropping, I guess is it deleted scene? Is this just deleted footage? Like what? Who knows what nebulous territory we're in, but of Gambit walking around after that battle and then looking into a sparkly portal, as Deadpool calls it, which Ryan Reynolds says that's his proudest moment from the movie, is that he heard somebody from Marvel Studios development call it a sparkly portal. He's like, I've done it. I've weaseled my way in. Teasing Gambit possibly returning in some way, shape, or form. You need friends like Ryan Reynolds who gonna ride for you no matter what. He is trying to single-handedly get this Gambit thing announced by next Comic-Con if he can keep up the posting schedule, which seems very rigorous. So what does everybody think about Channing getting to make a name for himself again, by himself this time?
I'm mixed on it, because on one hand, it was so fun to see him, and bless this man, he clearly loves doing this. Like, he loves Gambit, and you want to see that, right? But also, I think the point of this team in this movie is to give them all their moment, right? Like the extra moment. Like that's like what Elektra says. We have our time, our ending, and I really don't think that group of people, of any of them, I think Laura would be the one to push out to see more of, but I just don't think it'd be necessary. I feel like we are trying so hard to push back on former X-Men stuff, and I feel like get it all in Secret Wars and then let's move on. I think I'm the queen of nostalgia. I love it. I'm a sucker, but for the sake of moving on and creativity, I do think that we've got to push forward at some point. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but I do think that's gotta happen.
I agree with you. I'm definitely a little more optimistic than you seem to be in this whole situation, but because I view this akin to how Ryan leaked like the Deadpool test footage like all of those years ago. Like the road to getting the first Deadpool made, I feel like this is a very similar sort of situation with it. It is clear that he is advocating for Channing and just for him to get his moment. And like still the fact that this happened is still crazy for me to believe. Like the fact that he actually got to play Gambit in any context is still incredible to me. I feel like there is a way to bring him back, let him get his movie or his something, even if it is just like coming back for Secret Wars and having a more prominent role and then walking off into the sunset. I feel like there's a way to do that while still creating space for the new X-Men that we're going to get in the MCU, a new Gambit, all of that sort of stuff. But I am not surprised that they're kind of pushing this a little bit. I also think it's a thing where there are only so many opportunities to like legitimately listen to the fans, to be able to gauge how people are feeling about a certain thing and then respond to it and make creative decisions based off of that. And I feel like this has the potential to be one of those decisions, which like we haven't had one of those in the MCU, I feel like in a while.
It's so interesting that you put it that way too, because like this is what we were alluding to earlier. Also, is that Ryan's also rattling that cage to get Wesley Snipes a Blade 4, where it's like Logan, and it's like a big, like very very intense, like dramatic version of it, where he gets like full closure. And I was like, this is so interesting. You think they would just do like is it James Cameron who did the thing for Aliens? Am I getting the story right?
With the whiteboard and the dollar sign.
Yeah.
Just that was James Cameron. Yeah.
S $ slashes and have both of them in it and find some way to move it forward. But I don't know. Like I can take it or leave it. I never thought I'd see Wesley Snipes on a screen doing Blade again before Secret Wars. So we're truly off the grid. Jamie has thoughts. That face in the corner.
How I feel. Like you all know that how much I love Blade and how much I love Wesley Snipes' Blade and how Aaron got hit the hardest in Deadpool when Wesley Snipes' Blade pulls up. I do think it's funny that Ryan Reynolds is like pushing for it because they had like a 20-year feud over the third Blade. And let's not forget, the third Blade movie is not good. It has its moments. It has Parker Posey, and Parker Posey makes everything better. But like the third Blade movie is not very good. And as much as like, yeah, if we get Mahershala and Wesley together, I could get on board with that. Because I do love his Blade, but it's exactly what I just said before. I think we need to press forward a little bit, and Mahershala is going to be amazing, like and
so amazing.
The snipers got to her.
They got her again.
She's saying too much about Blade.
Right. Oh, there you are. You're back.
You're back.
She's just
I'm done. I'm over it.
Aaron, what were you gonna say?
Just that we'll see what happens. We're so everything is so different from 6 months ago, guys. I don't know what's gonna happen. Sure, fine. Have both of them. Have neither. I don't know. I can tell you this though. People are concerned that they're gonna cancel Blade. I do not think that's gonna happen because the producers who are at the top of this thing, like especially Feige, worked on Blade. He's not canceling that movie. He's gonna say, "Look at what I just did. Please give me my $80 million budget to go make my vampire movie." That's what's going to happen. So I have faith in that.
Well, so speaking of nostalgia and of characters who did not appear in Deadpool and Wolverine, Thomas Jane, who previously played the Punisher, spoke to our friends at the Direct and were asked if was approached at all to cameo in Deadpool and Wolverine. And he literally just said, nope. And then he went on to say, I like John Bernthal's Punisher. I think, for me, it was always a little bit of a stretch. Frank Castle is supposed to be an Italian American. I'm not. I'm an Irish American. So for me, I had to dye the hair and sort of take on a persona, but Bernthal wears it so well. So I think they should stick with him. So that is at least one cameo. We know that Punishers were referenced in Deadpool and Wolverine, but we didn't actually see one. But so it sounds like he was not approached on the list of cameos that they could have considered.
I really love this quote. I think it's like a class act kind of thing to say because we are in a time where casting's a little different now. And it is no secret that Thomas Jane's Punisher is my least favorite Marvel movie of all time. But he still was a good Punisher. I mean, there's no denying that. But for him to say this and just like hype up the next guy, it's kind of the same thing with Jessica Alba. We love to see that.
It's funny because they obviously are on really good terms too, because like Bernthal was training and like ran into him and they like getting a lift together in the gym. And I'm like, how awesome must it be to have the full tacit support of the guy who played the role before you and is like really rooting for you in that way. It's very wholesome for this very dark, very, very gritty character. Maybe not befitting of Frank Castle, but fun to see. And, if you think we're not seeing one of the other two Punishers in like that Secret Wars, like team up, I don't know what to tell you. It's gonna probably be Dolph. And listen, put that man in bubble wrap. Please get to Secret Wars, Dolph Lundgren. Please do. All right.
Another character who did not appear in Deadpool and Wolverine, and who addressed the possibility of that.
I think we were all shocked and outraged that Pizza Papa did not make an appearance in Deadpool and Wolverine. Bruce Campbell talked to comic book's own Chris Killian at San Diego Comic-Con, and when asked about not being in Deadpool, he just goes, he's not in that timeline. He's in a different timeline. Great. And then, Bruce, love this man. He goes, well, here's what I say to Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. Get a room. What's with the bromance? We get it. Thank you. Next. Go back to your soccer team, Ryan. So when people like Thomas and Jessica are being kind, on the other hand, I love Bruce Campbell razzing everybody because that's Bruce Campbell. Delightful. Great. Yeah, why would Pizza Papa be there? That's
I just love that it could have been a possibility. Nothing was off the table. So who knows? If you haven't watched that interview, I highly, highly recommend it. The Deadpool and Wolverine popcorn bucket comes up and like so many other things. It goes off the rails very, very quickly. And it is very fun to see. But yeah, I wasn't expecting him to be in it, but it would have been funny if they like threaded that needle in any sort of way. But I get why it didn't happen.
The rights issue stuff is so arcane and strange that like the thing that you would have done with Bruce Campbell in that movie would have been put a fishbowl on his head and have him get zapped by a lion. That's what you probably would have done, but we can't do that because we can't even show Tom Holland's character that no one knows the name of. So, it is what it is. Yeah. Could you imagine the pop from certain points of the internet, though, if like Pizza Papa was just driving Sam Raimi's car that's in all those movies? Like, there's a certain brand of film Twitter person who's like, yes, we're really, really back. So, and yes, go watch Chris Killian try to herd cats in the interview. He's trying his best. He's trying his absolute best.
Great. It's so great. All right. And then to wrap things up today, we have a return of everybody's favorite segment on Phase Zero.
Richard. Drop my basket. It's been too long. It's time for a spicy nugget of the week. The internet. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Elliot, by the way, for this wonderful, wonderful art to accompany the segment. So you might have heard a little movie called Spider-Man 4. We are in the midst of our long wait for Spider-Man 4. That Jamie has advised us that don't get your hopes up. There was supposed to be a Spider-Man 4 before, and she's correct about that. I feel all right though. Like Tom and Zendaya are out here reading books to each other on the beach, so we should be fine. I don't know if you've seen the pictures.
Yes.
But the rumors from I want to say it's Daniel RPK, right? Say that we got ourselves a story. We're targeting 26, maybe in the middle of Secret Wars. Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. It will be, he says it's going to be a multiverse story, which is contentious on the internet, where everything is debated rationally, discussed calmly by all the participants in a general conversation. A lot of the internet wants Spider-Man 4 to be a street level thing with like Punisher and Daredevil and just him in the costume swinging around New York City. And it does not sound at the moment from what we know. I don't know. If anybody's got Amy Pascal's number, somebody go dial it so I can ask real questions about what's going on with Spider-Man 4. But yeah, how do we feel about reportedly it being a multiverse focused thing? It's nice to see our boys back, but at what cost?
Like I have said when we've talked about this before, it felt inevitable that by the time we would get to Secret Wars, he would have the black suit. Like that is one of the most iconic images from Secret Wars as a title. And if they don't lay the groundwork for that to happen, I will be shocked. That teaser poster of him just recreating the pose from the one Secret Wars cover will sell like hotcakes. It'll be ridiculous how much people would want to see that. So I get that this is going to probably be a multiverse story. Like, again, who knows? This is all still heavily rumored at this point. But as I've said when we've talked about this before, I feel like a lot of the behind the scenes logistical stuff that they've been figuring out was if this was going to be a multiverse movie because Sony wants it to be, how does that relate to Avengers 5 and 6? Because I don't think Feige necessarily wanted it to be a multiverse story if it was going to be set before 5 and 6 and before we started really, really getting into the crazy multiverse stuff. So I agree. I would have loved to have seen a street level thing. I still, Felicia Hardy, Black Cat, I still desperately want to see at some point in this franchise. And I don't know if that's going to be in Spider-Man 4, but I'm curious to see what this ends up looking like.
Jamie.
The way the last movie ended, I feel like it should be street level because that's what they set up, not another multiverse story. It feels like if they do that, they're just going to erase everything that happened and Peter's just going to be like I'm with my friends again. But just make it good, and I'll be happy. So we'll see what happens. Sony, do your thing.
This is what I was warning on the way out of it. I was like, that's a lot to ask, man. I don't even know where the rights were. What was going on in life? And like, was it 20? Is that 21 when No Way Home came out? Oh yeah, it's been ages. I don't know what the heck's gonna happen. We need to get through the Venom horse first before we get to anything involving Spider-Man 4. Jamie's losing her stuff in the corner. Goodness gracious.
Venom horse then Rhino.
Venom horse then Rhino. Oh
yeah.
God, the end of the year. What's gonna happen to us?
We have some wild couple of months. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So, go on, Aaron.
Oh, I was gonna say, and maybe Miles ? I don't know. Someone pointed out in the chat. I'm like, oh God, no.
Who knows?
In the show, we don't know. In the show.
That's it for today's Phase Zero. I do have to point out, rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman, because this is the anniversary of his passing. Thank you to the chat for pointing that out to us. Aaron, is there anything you would like to leave the listeners with today?
Oh man, it's at Some of the Corner on Twitter. I'd like to thank everybody for hanging out. The WandaVision rewatch on Monday was a lot of fun. We're gonna do that. Someone in the chat brought up a Multiverse of Madness rewatch as a part of the Witch's Road to Agatha, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm always down. We haven't talked about Benedict Wong in like what feels like a year on this show. Jamie is like all ears. So yeah, that's great. And the Superman documentary that Jenna mentioned, at least go watch that trailer. That's a really solid work by the team over there, the old Blue brand.
I will say, because someone in the chat was like, oh, I don't think it's going to screen near me. It is supposed to be on Max after it is released in theaters. So you will get a chance to see it, thankfully. So Jamie.
I would like to formally apologize to all of our listeners for my internet issues. I am deeply ashamed, and I will work on doing better as a human being and an internet purchaser. Follow me at Jamie Dirac on Letterboxd, on Instagram at Jamie Cinematics, on Twitter. I want to shout out just all you listeners for being here today. I really, really appreciate you. Thank you.
The gremlins are to blame for your internet connection. It's not you.
Yeah.
You're good. I am at Hey It's Jenna Lynn on social media. As always, go read some comics. There are 2 this week that I highly, highly recommend, like 5-star reviews for me. Archie the Decision from Tom King and Dan Parent. It is billed as Archie finally making a decision between Betty and Veronica, and it is as wild of an execution of that concept as you can possibly expect. I highly recommend it. And then Aliens versus Avengers starts this week from Jonathan Hickman and Asad Ribic, and it is unbelievable. It surprised me in so many ways I was not expecting. It is a very cool, very gnarly, very emotional comic, and I highly, highly recommend reading that. Do not forget to follow the show at Phase Zero CB. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice if you haven't already done so. As Aaron mentioned, we will be continuing our WandaVision rewatch. We'll see about Multiverse of Madness. I think it'll depend on scheduling, but we're definitely going to keep that going. We also have some spotlight interviews on the horizon, but we will not tease those yet. We just want to make sure that they're all squared away first. And we will be back on Wednesday with another regular news episode with whatever other crazy post-credit scene today might deliver. So I hope to see you all there. Bye.